Some worlds breathe so quietly that only the dust remembers they were ever alive. On such a sphere, the sun moves without ceremony, tracing shadows across endless avenues of stone markers. The wind moves with the weight of incense and burnt offerings, as if the planet itself participates in the rites that bind its dead to the throne. Beneath its surface lie vaults as deep as cathedrals are tall, and above, the sky is a vault of faded constellations, witness to every burial procession since the first soil was turned. The Imperium calls these places cemetery worlds, or mortuary worlds, and their designation is no mere bureaucratic label. Each is a monument in planetary form, consecrated by the Adeptus Ministorum to receive the honoured remains of the Emperor's faithful. They stand within the same holy category as shrine worlds, yet their sanctity has a heavier, more earthen gravity. Faith is carved here, not sung, etched into the facades of mausoleums, laid in tessellated bone-white paving, impressed into the very pattern of the streets that spiral around 1,000 tomb spires. Some are born of single tragedies so vast they could not be forgotten. Worlds where entire continents were consumed by battle, where the soil is black with the ashes of guard regiments and planetary militias who fought until their last cartridges were spent and their last breaths given to defiance. Others began as the private graveyards of noble dynasties, each mausoleum a fortress of memory, layered generation upon generation, until the living found no place left for themselves. There are planets whose burial fields swell with the overflow from neighbouring hives, worlds that serve as the lungs of the dead, drawing in the remains of the teeming multitudes and exhaling only silence. The approach to such a world is unlike any other. Orbital auguries show no industry save for the slow drift of processional craft and the gentle gleam of shrine ports. The void stations serve not as fortresses, but as reliquaries, their decks lined with sarcophagi, awaiting planetary descent. Pilgrim ships come with holds full of coffins, draped in the heraldry of regiments or the colours of planets long subsumed into the Imperium's ledger. The air within these ships is heavy with embalming vapours, and the crew move with a reverence learned from seeing more dead than living. On the surface, the rhythm of existence is a measured liturgy. The Ecclesiarchy maintains its silent armies of pallbearers, sepulchral architects, ossuary keepers, and censer bearers whose task is unending. No day passes without the rites. Processions of mourners thread between statue-lined avenues, their footfalls echoing in the open air or resonating through cloistered vaults. The sound of bells carries for kilometres, slow and deliberate, a sound not of alarm but of completion. The earth itself becomes a kind of scripture. Every grave marker, every engraved wall is a line in an ever-expanding epic of imperial sacrifice. And as the centuries turn to millennia, the markers weather under alien winds, the inscriptions fade, but the pattern remains, the map of the world itself reshaped by the hand of remembrance. To walk such a surface is to move through a library of bones, where every step is a turning page. Here, the dead outnumber the living beyond measure, yet the living are never absent. Priests tend to the tombs, as gardeners tend to a sacred grove, their chants binding the past to the present. Pilgrims kneel before the ossuary doors, not to speak with their ancestors, but to affirm that the blood given in war was not lost to the void. This is the unbroken chain of faith that stretches from the most recent grave back to the first mound of earth raised in the name of the Emperor. The cemetery world does not age in the way of other planets. Its heart does not quicken with trade or conquest, nor does its sky blaze with the flares of new industry. It endures, layered year upon year, grave upon grave, until it is not merely a planet that contains the dead. It becomes the dead. And the silence that pervades it is not emptiness, but fullness beyond measure. On a cemetery world, the Emperor's voice is not carried by the roar of battle cannons or the fury of orbital bombardments. It comes in the measured tolling of bells, the slow exhalation of censers, the thrum of ancient hymns given to the air for no ear but his. The Adeptus Ministorum, in all its splendour and solemnity, stands here as the eternal steward of memory. Its priests do not fight the enemies of man with bolter or blade. Their war is waged against the eroding hand of time and the corruption of neglect. The Ecclesiarchy's presence is absolute. No secular planetary governor holds sway over a mortuary world. Its authority is a cathedral hierarchy, with the cardinal administrator presiding from the grand reliquary basilica. Here, vaults of gold-chased marble hold not relics of saints alone, but the mortal dust of heroes whose names once swayed the fate of worlds. The basilica's spire rises like a finger toward the Astronomicon, a constant petition for the Emperor's gaze to fall upon the planet. Each district of the planet is overseen by an order of funerary custodians sworn to a lifetime of service. They are the archivists of death, chronicling every burial in illuminated scripture, ensuring that the sequence of names and deeds can be read without interruption for thousands of years. Some custodians are itinerant, carrying relics to distant shrines on the planet's surface. Others never leave their assigned ossuaries, spending entire decades in dim-lit vaults beneath the earth, walking paths only the dead remember. The daily cycle of a cemetery world follows the ancient rites dictated in the Libidinal Codex, a tome older than some segmenta themselves. Dawn begins with the procession of the first light, priests and novices moving through the burial avenues with incense and holy oil, reciting the creed of return to dust. At zenith, the great dedication sees the cardinal administrator deliver a prayer not for victory, but for constancy, binding the living to the same steadfastness as the dead they guard. The funeral masses themselves are acts of both faith and theatre. Sarcophagi are borne on black lacquered litters flanked by robed confessors, while censer-bearers trail smoke thick with myrrh, cinder and sacred ash. Choirs intone laments in high Gothic, their harmonies echoing through the bone corridors of the catacombs. In the final moment before interment, the litany of sealing is spoken, a prayer that commits the remains to the Emperor's keeping, sealing not only the tomb, but the life it contains. Yet the Ecclesiarchy's stewardship is not purely ceremonial. In a galaxy where heresy festers in forgotten corners and even the most sacred ground can be tainted, the Ministorum's hold over a mortuary world is also a watch. No unauthorized excavation is tolerated. No burial is permitted without exhaustive verification of loyalty to the throne. Inquisitorial agents move unseen among the mourners, sifting for cult infiltration or signs that the bones beneath the earth are not entirely still. The Adepta Sororitas often maintain a permanent garrison on cemetery worlds of particular note, their presence both devotional and martial. These Sisters of the Argent Shroud or the Order of the Ebon Chalice patrol the pilgrimage routes and stand vigil in the great necropolis halls, their bolt guns no less ready than in the siege of a fortress monastery. Theirs is a dual charge, to protect the sanctity of the dead and to ensure that no heretic or alien uses the solemn quiet as a mask for invasion. Through centuries of unbroken ritual, the Ecclesiarchy weaves a planetary liturgy. A cemetery world does not merely house the honoured dead, it becomes an active relic, a living act of devotion to the Emperor's eternal dominion. In the care of the Ministorum, such a world is more than memorial. It is a bulwark against forgetfulness, a weapon of faith sharpened across millennia. And as each name is chiselled into the stone, the tally of loyalty grows ever higher, a record the Imperium holds dearer than gold or starship. A cemetery world does not emerge from nothing. Its soil is tilled first by war, its skies shrouded by the smoke of extinction events, and its rivers stained by the runoff of battlefields where the wounded lay in heaps. The transformation from battleground to planetary sepulchre is neither swift nor clean. It is the result of a long imperial reckoning with the dead, a process in which grief hardens into policy and policy calcifies into tradition. Many mortuary worlds began as the sites of singular galaxy-shaking battles. On such planets, the very landscape is a record of violence. Craters grown over with moss, the skeletal frames of manufactoria standing like burnt-out candles, the fossilized lines of trenches that once zigzagged for hundreds of kilometers. After victory, if victory came, the surviving Imperial forces would often find the sheer volume of dead too vast to repatriate. The bodies of regiments, planetary defense corps, civilian levies, and off-world reinforcements mingled together in fields of ruin. A commander might call for burial in massed consecration, the Ministorum declaring the world itself a holy resting place for all who perished there. There are also those planets whose transformation was born from dynastic pride. Noble houses of the segmentum solar and beyond, ruling for millennia, required burial grounds on a scale commensurate with their lineage. What began as sprawling mausoleum gardens became necropoli covering entire provinces. Over generations, as the nobility's reach extended across sectors, the mortuary world became a centralized archive of their lineage, guarded as jealously as any fortress. Such planets are often ringed with void defenses, not to keep enemies out, but to ensure no rival house can lay claim to the memory of those entombed within. A different path leads from the overcrowded hive world. When a planet's surface and subsurface levels become choked with habitation and industry, the dead are an unsustainable burden. Even the upper hives, with their private ossuaries, eventually reach a limit. The solution for many hive clusters is export. Whole holds of bodies sent to a nearby world, designated as a burial satellite. With centuries of this influx, the satellite world becomes nothing but grave and shrine, its economy revolving entirely around the receipt, consecration, and entombment of bodies from its overcrowded neighbour. Strategically, the Imperium sometimes uses the creation of a cemetery world to secure control over contested space. Declaring a world to be sacred ground ensures that it becomes a pilgrimage site, drawing traffic loyal to the throne and thus strengthening Imperial presence. For the enemies of man, the desecration of such a world becomes an act so profane that it guarantees retribution from every Imperial arm. This deterrence is not always effective. Tyranids consume without care for sanctity. Necron tomb fleets may awaken beneath consecrated soil, and chaos forces delight in mocking such places, but it serves to fix the world firmly in the psychic and cultural map of the Imperium. The warp often leaves its mark on the origins of these worlds. Many lie in the aftermath of battles fought against demonic incursion, where the Ministorum deems the land purified only through endless blessing and the layering of the faithful dead upon it. Others are sites where Xenos artifacts were unearthed, and the decision was made to bury both the relic and the discoverers beneath holy ground, sealing away danger beneath centuries of memorial stone. In each case, the forging of a cemetery world is not a passive affair. It is the act of reshaping an entire biosphere into a reliquary, rivers redirected to flow past processional causeways, mountains carved into tomb complexes, city ruins rebuilt into sanctuaries. The old purpose of the land is erased, its new identity set in marble, gold leaf, and the quiet geometry of gravestones. The living adapt to a rhythm dictated by the dead, and in time, they cease to think of their world as anything else. A cemetery world is a vast and deliberate construction, not merely a planet with graves scattered upon it. Every mausoleum, ossuary, and bone vault is set with precision into a design that extends across continents, its patterns often laid out on the planetary scale centuries before the first stone is raised. The faithful believe these alignments mirror constellations sacred to the Imperial creed, so that in the eyes of the Emperor, the planet itself becomes a devotional star map. In the older mortuary worlds, mausoleum cities rise tier upon tier, their lowest vaults sinking deep into the planetary crust while their spires knife the sky. Facades of black basalt are inlaid with silver scripture, the lettering so fine that even the tip of a stylus could not pass between the lines. Statues line the processional ways, saints with bowed heads, heroes standing in defiant repose, winged angels bearing torches whose flames burn without fuel by virtue of ancient Mechanicus devices. Each street is oriented so that twice in the year, the rising sun casts its light directly through the grand nave of the central reliquary. The ossuary halls are another realm entirely. Beneath the surface, kilometre-long galleries stretch in geometrical perfection, their walls honeycombed with niches sealed by engraved ceramite plates. In some, the remains are interred in reliquary casings of gold filigree and sapphire glass. In others, the bones are arranged into great works of devotional art. Arches, chandeliers, even entire chapels sculpted from the skeletons of regiments. Pilgrims walk these halls in hushed reverence, tracing fingers over the worn seals, murmuring prayers to names long unspoken. Where the dead are too numerous for individual monuments, the planet answers with grandeur in scale. Endless fields of simple markers stretch like an ocean of stone, each no larger than a man's chest, all inscribed with a number keyed to the Imperial archives. In the high hours of sunlight, these fields gleam white, a reflection so strong it can be seen from orbit as a pale scar on the world's surface. At dusk, they become a horizon of shadow, broken only by the silhouettes of the sensor towers that rise at intervals, their bronze bells tolling in patterns known to the entire Ecclesiarchy. Climate shapes the artistry of these worlds. In the frozen latitudes, crypts are carved into glaciers, their entryways adorned with ice-carved saints, whose forms slowly shift under centuries of thaw and frost. In the desert belts, catacombs lie beneath dunes so vast they seem to move like tides, the entrances marked by monoliths that project the Emperor's visage in shimmering mirage to guide pilgrims. In temperate regions, open-air sanctuaries bloom with gardens cultivated from flora, sacred to Imperial saints. Every petal and leaf an offering. Some of the grandest mortuary worlds maintain Tomb Mechanica, vast automated complexes maintained by the Adeptus Mechanicus, designed to move, clean, and preserve millions of sarcophagi with unerring precision. These machines, some of which have been in motion since the Great Crusade, glide along tracks of black adamant, their servo arms cradling coffins as gently as if they were children. Liturgical canticles to the Omnissiah echo in these halls, alongside the Ministorum's own hymns, a rare harmony between creed and machine. Even in their architectural glory, these worlds are not without shadows. There are vaults sealed for reasons unspoken, doorways upon which warning sigils have been chiseled deep and then filled with gold to endure until the sun's dying light. The faithful pass them without question, trusting that some matters are better left buried. In this way, the architecture itself becomes a keeper of secrets, holding within its walls both the pride and the unspoken fears of the Imperium. To walk the surface of a cemetery world is to pass through layers of time given form. Every stone, arch, and steeple a memory made solid. The architecture does not merely house the dead, it speaks for them. No world, however sanctified, lies beyond the grasping hand of war. A cemetery world may stand for centuries in inviolate quiet, its only movement the turning of the sun over stone, until the day when an intruder disturbs the soil and breaks the seal of its silence. In such moments, the planet's purpose as memorial collides with the Imperium's perpetual state of siege. Some incursions are born of malice. Heretical cults view the graves of Imperial heroes as ripe ground for blasphemy, defacing mausoleums with profane sigils or harvesting bones for unholy rituals. The Inquisition treats such acts with uncompromising severity, often declaring planetary purges to ensure no trace of corruption lingers. An entire catacomb can be collapsed and entombed in ferrocrete if a single vault shows evidence of chaos taint. In the aftermath, the surviving priest will rededicate the ruin, turning even the destruction into an act of devotion. Xenos intrusions carry their own peculiar horrors. Orc warbands sometimes descend upon a cemetery world not for plunder, but for sport, smashing statuary and tearing apart tombs in crude mockery. Tyrannid swarms consume without discrimination, their feeder organisms stripping marrow from ancient bones as readily as fresh flesh. Necron awakenings are rarer, but when they occur, they are among the most devastating. The tomb complexes of the Necrontyr can lie buried beneath Imperial ossuaries for millennia, their presence unsuspected until the black monoliths rise through the consecrated ground, shattering memorials that have stood for ages. Even the warp finds its way into these hallowed places. In certain vaults, the souls of the interred are said to call out through the Imperium, attracting predatory entities that slither between reality and nightmare. The Ecclesiarchy maintains entire orders of exorcist priests whose sole duty is to walk the night paths of the necropoli, chanting warding litanies until dawn's light. In extreme cases, the Adepta Sororitas will enact the rite of cauterization, sealing an afflicted district under purifying fire and molten stone. The political ramifications of intrusion are rarely simple. When a cemetery world is attacked, it is not merely a tactical loss. It is a wound to the Imperium's spirit. A defiled shrine to the dead can ignite sector-wide pilgrimages of penance, drawing war fleets to exact vengeance upon the perpetrators. In this way, a mortuary world can become the spark for campaigns that last decades, its sanctity defended with the same fury as a fortress world on the front lines. Yet there are moments when the intrusion comes not from an enemy, but from necessity. In times of extreme crisis, when campaigns falter and nearby worlds teeter on the edge of loss, the strategic position of a cemetery world can demand its militarization. The sacred processional causeways become supply lines, ossuary vaults serve as bunkers, and sensor towers are retrofitted to signal and gun emplacements. The living fight amid the dead, turning their ancestors' resting places into battlefields once more. It is a grim inversion, and one the Ministorum will only sanction when the alternative is annihilation. For all their serenity, cemetery worlds exist in the same galaxy as every other Imperial possession, a galaxy that devours its own history as readily as it preserves it. Every intrusion, every battle fought among the tombs, becomes part of the world's layered memory. The monuments repaired, the bells restored, and the litanies resumed, but the stone never forgets. A cemetery world stands as more than the sum of its tombs. It is a planetary oath written in stone, marble, and bone, a vow that the sacrifices of the Imperium's children will not be forgotten, even if the galaxy itself is swallowed in darkness. To step upon such a world is to feel the weight of that oath pressing from every direction, in the towering spires of the mausoleums, in the measured tread of the pallbearers, and in the very air, perfumed with centuries of incense. Each burial is an affirmation. A guardsman laid to rest beneath a simple marker joins a legion of the fallen whose lives were spent defending a cause so vast that no one person could hope to comprehend it in full. A space marine entombed within an adamantine sarcophagus is not only a relic of his chapter's glory, but also a symbol of humanity's refusal to yield. Even the humble pilgrim interred in an unadorned grave becomes part of the unbroken wall of faith that shields the throne from despair. The power of a mortuary world lies not solely in the dead it holds, but in the continuity it enforces. Here, the past is not relegated to archives or forgotten scrolls. It is given form and permanence. A child born on such a planet will grow beneath the gaze of statues whose faces are worn away by centuries, yet whose deeds are still spoken in liturgies. Pilgrims will kneel beside the tombs of strangers and speak their names as if they were kin. Time itself is bent around this act of remembrance, refusing to let the galaxy's ceaseless violence erase the truth of those who came before. In this way, the cemetery world becomes both shield and weapon. Shield, in that it guards the spirit of the Imperium, reinforcing the shared identity of worlds scattered across unimaginable gulfs of space. Weapon, in that it steals the hearts of the living, reminding them that they fight not only for survival, but for the honor of the countless dead whose bones lie underfoot. Every procession, every chime of the bells, is a summons to endure. The Imperium's enemies may sneer at such devotion, calling it waste or weakness. Yet it is precisely in these places of quiet that the truest defiance is found. Against the entropy of time, against the howling hunger of the warp, against the inevitability of death itself, the cemetery world stands immovable. It declares, without need of voice, that mankind will not be reduced to dust without witness. And so, when the bells toll in the shadow of the mausoleum spires, their sound carries further than the wind. It moves along the pilgrim roads, across the shrine ports, and into the void, where fleets hear it in the silence between stars. It is not a call to arms, nor a plea for mercy. It is a statement, as unyielding as the stones it echoes from. The Imperium remembers, and while it remembers, it endures.